and wrong. So we're here to talk just about data ethics today. We are from Stats New Zealand, and within Stats we sit within the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation, which is a very, very grand title for we are half of it. It's a very small unit within Stats, and our role is about increasing the maturity of people's understanding around data ethics and how to use data. And obviously from an AI perspective, AI is now for sexy data. And so if people can understand their data, then it can help with actually getting better AI. And so we'll start with a wee bit of what is data ethics?
Brilliant. Thanks, Emma. Hello, everybody. I'm the other Emma. I'm just going to give a very quick high-level overview of data ethics, just in case anyone out there is unfamiliar. Sure you're not, but just in case. So in essence, data ethics is about ensuring that data is used responsibly and ethically. It's about minimizing harm, but also maximizing benefits for everybody. It's about caring for and using data in ways that respect and protect people's privacy, their rights. It's about promoting fairness. It's not just about following laws, but it's more about doing what's right when you're collecting and using information about people. It can encompass quite a broad range of issues. Privacy, consent, fairness, accountability, transparency, and focusing on the ethical implications of your data practice use and the potential impact on individuals and society. So it does draw on more traditional ethics, but it tackles more specifically the unique challenges created in our data-rich world, and especially as we move into a new era where vast amounts of data is used. It's no longer optional, it's pretty critical. So finally, just in essence, it's about asking, is this the right thing to do? We can do it, but should we? And can we do better? So over to you, Emma.
So we often get asked, how does it differ from normal ethics? And so we've boiled it down to there are 6 core things that you need to be thinking about. And so when we talk about normal ethics, the scale and the reach, and just a human level, is usually quite small. So quite often when you're talking about an ethical conundrum, they use the trolley bus, and is the trolley bus going to hit these people or is it going to hit these people? When you're talking about data, the scale of who can be harmed is so much greater. With one algorithm, you can impact hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and a lot of the time they won't even know that they have been harmed. The scale's just so much better, which goes to the visibility of harm as well. Throw that to you, Emma, to talk about that.
Yeah, visibility of harm is a really fascinating one for me, because traditional ethics, we think about consequences as very visible or immediate. I took that action and this happened. I didn't check a safety switch and my colleague got hurt. But with data ethics, consequences and harms can be invisible. They can be delayed or statistical. And people affected might never know. They don't know why they were denied a loan or didn't get a job. And the harm can often be discovered long after it happened, which makes it difficult to reverse or even know where the harm originated from. I think of it like a virus on a surface. People can't see it to avoid it.
There's also a collective impact to the harms that are done, in that when we're talking about things like the Privacy Act, particularly in a Western philosophy, it is a lot of the time around the individual. But when you're talking about anonymized data, it becomes a collective harm. You can get so much more group harm, or communities will be harmed because you have collectively used data of people that look a lot like me. And so therefore that has an impact on communities or on specific groups, even if they're not impacted or they're not part of the where the data has come from. It's just people who look a lot like you will get a collective harm on how we actually collect the data together and make assumptions about different groups. And so we need to be really, really careful about understanding, alongside the big data that we're using, what is the thick data and the actual contextual elements of it to understand what is really going on, as opposed to just assuming the big data is telling us the whole story.
So power dynamics. Traditional ethics tends to recognize that power imbalances exist, but within data ethics, you're having to consider that there are new and less obvious power imbalances that can be created. And so, for example, people that hold or own lots of data generally have significant advantage and control. And often that's not necessarily fully understood. So they can profit, sell it, use it to control. But this power is not well understood by the individuals whose data it is, or it's not very transparent. We see this with the social media giants, for example. So yeah, that's a really key point in the difference of traditional ethics and data ethics.
She said that so much better than me, Emma. I actually have text bros and how obscenely wealthy they are, and how it just can't be right having that much wealth put in. The other thing, and this is something I'm really fascinated with at the moment, and I'm having a lot of conversations with people about it, is around the consent challenges. When, as researchers, when you do research, you go out and you get consent, and it's usually reasonably easy. You're quite transparent about what the research is going to be. But when you're talking about data, and particularly data going into data-driven technologies or going into big anonymized data sets, you have no concept of where that data is going to go and what it is going to be used for. And there are really great innovative things that we should be using that data for, because the public benefit is immense in being able to use these huge data sets. But it means that the way that we've traditionally done consent, we need to start having much more grown-up conversations about what that looks like and how we do that. And so there is a huge shifting in what does that look like as we go forward.
Yeah. And so our final sort of key difference is technical complexity. So traditional ethics doesn't tend to require very specialized knowledge to understand an ethical dilemma. But often data ethics involves technical concepts, and that can make ethical issues hard to spot or discuss without specific expertise. And often data ethics can sit in silos in an organization, but it actually needs to be a mix of people with both technical and non-technical skills to come together, and from the start, just to bring that awareness across and mix those skills and that specialist knowledge.
Excellent. So Emma touched a little bit on this earlier when she was talking about why data ethics matter, and the fact that it is one of those things around, there is a grayness with a lot of the data, and it's just, we're in the murky bit in between a lot of the conversations. And so I can sit here and I can tell you that, it matters because it's really important and you should be doing the right thing. But actually, there are also really, really concrete things that you need to be thinking about when you're using data, particularly personal data, but actually any data coming forward has got an impact. So building trust is obviously a big one that we talk about, particularly within government, but within businesses and as researchers as well. It's really important to build trust with the people whose data that you are using. If you have a trusted relationship, they are more likely to give you better data, more fulsome data, and to be able to work with you to have that used so that you're seeing more and more benefit coming out of it. And so actually having those trusted relationships, it's hugely important, because it means that actually you can do your job better.
Data is shaping our future. And so I will use government as an example of this. Government's approach, our approach to data ethics today, will most definitely shape the country. So the decisions about data collection, use, algorithmic design, privacy, all of these things will impact individuals and communities, and likely for years to come. The very classic example that gets wheeled out a lot, but it's an important example, is the Australian robo-debt, where an automated system incorrectly accused thousands of people of welfare fraud. And eventually it was ruled unlawful, and it cost that government 1.2 billion in settlements. But it also inflicted immeasurable harm for a lot of people. So, how we treat data, how we look after it, we have to remember there's a human at the end of it, because it is going to shape the future.
The competitive advantage one for me is very much tied in with the building trust as well. If you have those trusted relationships with the people whose data that you're getting, you are more likely to have a competitive advantage. And quite often when we're talking competitive advantage, people think about, the whole business space, but it's a competitive advantage within sort of the research sense as well, in that if you are trusted, then funders will be more likely to look at you, positively. If you have got communities and they trust you, they are more likely to work with you than other researchers. And it's the same within the business community. People will go back to organizations where they actually feel trusted, or if you do something just stupid, whether it's intentionally or most often it's not intentionally, that can cost you dearly. So obviously the Facebook Cambridge Analytica example is a classic one of how much money Facebook lost in a single day. They have managed to weather the storm, but a lot of companies haven't necessarily weathered the storm. And so Equifax in America lost $700 million in settlements in a few weeks after exposing 147 million people's data to it. Target lost, I think it was something like $40 million, 40 million people's credit card details during the holiday season, when people need their credit cards the most. And that has taken them years, and they lost an awful lot of clientele as a result of that. And so it's just that competitive advantage. If you look after people's data, they will trust you, and that gives you an advantage in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Regulatory compliance. I always struggle with that word. The regulatory environment around data is evolving really, really, really quickly, particularly internationally. We see, significant movement and penalties for mishandling personal information. Here in New Zealand, for example, failing to report a data or privacy breach can cost you 10K. As well as all the expenses and the legal fees and the cost to address it. While our regulatory environment here is not as evolved as others, the other component of this is that if you are building products or services or tools that you intend to go to markets elsewhere, you need to understand those regulatory environments, because you will need to comply with them. And New Zealand will catch up. I don't know which way it will go, but it will. And so, that's an important part of why data ethics is really important, because it's preparing you for that regulation and legislation that might be coming, or that you will need to meet when you want to sell your services and products elsewhere.
This one's a really interesting one about the this moral stuff. We're finding with a lot of the futures thinking coming through and the mega trends that you're starting to see, it's becoming more and more common as a mega trend to see both employees and consumers actually caring about the ethics of an organization, whether that is from a climate change perspective or it is around how they use data. The climate change is obviously really important when we're talking about AI and the concerns that people have around the amount of energy that they're using. And so doing that in a really sensible way and having plans for that, but also how data is being used. And it's not just consumers, it is employees and where they are choosing to work. And so a few years back, there was an issue with Google and what they were doing within the Defence Force. And a number of their employees who were critical to pieces of work that they were doing decided that that wasn't appropriate and they didn't want to work with that. So they actually stopped that piece of work because you will lose particularly with the younger generation coming through. They seem to be a lot more ethical than my old generation, but just kidding, we're very ethical, honestly. But it is around actually understanding that there are issues if you don't take this seriously, not just from your consumer point of view, but from the people that you want to attract into your business or attract into your lab, or within government, actually work within a government agency. It's not fun working with a government agency when you don't have a great reputation or you've done something ridiculously stupid and you're in the front page of the Don Post. That's a very Beltway comment. Sorry, that probably on the front page of Stuff.
Yeah. Which leads nicely onto reputation. Whether you are a public or private entity, a person, a university, a school, reputation is everything, right? It's incredibly important. And reputational damage from data ethics failures are substantial, and they're getting more substantial and longer lasting. Emma mentioned earlier Cambridge Analytica. Facebook lost 119 billion of market value in one day from that. And the other thing about reputation is we all work really hard. Individuals, businesses, governments, whatever we are, we all work really hard to build and maintain a reputation. And therefore, data ethics, particularly as data is infusing into everything, literally everything, data ethics is pivotal to building or maintaining or improving a reputation. So it's such a great tool, and it's going to, you have to use it moving forward to protect your reputation, because there's no way data won't be part of what you're doing.
I think that one of the things that I found in the year or so that the couple of years that we've been running this Centre for Data Ethics is a lot of the time people think that what we're talking about is quite woolly, and the way that we present our folksy charm, it does come across as that a wee bit. But I want people to go away with this and understanding that there are real world implications if you don't take this seriously. And it is not something that is woolly, but it is something essential if you're going to be taken seriously in the current climate, with the fact that people are getting a lot more savvy, and things like, the Facebook scandal, or any of the privacy breaches that people have been impacted in, what happened with the Netherlands with the welfare scandal, robo-debt, which Emma mentioned before, all of these things mean people are becoming less and less trusting of what is going on. And I look at the world today, and the world is burning, and there will be a lot more mis and disinformation coming through a lot of our systems at the moment. And so people aren't going to be trusting. So as agencies, as academics, as government, we need to be really, really clear in how we are treating and respecting people's data, and that we're making sure that we are using it for the benefit of the people who have given us the data and for the wider Aotearoa, in order to be able to continue that trust, so that the people will share data, because it's becoming something that people are thinking a lot more about. And so we don't have any tick boxes for you. Data ethics isn't about tick boxes. It's about opening up conversations, because there is no right or wrong. It is very much around balancing really complex and difficult things, but doing it consciously, so that you make sure that you have thought through the implications, because so many issues occur within this space, not because people were particularly evil or were trying to do something bad. It was just they hadn't thought through the implications.